Welcome to Lecture 6B, a discussion of a video that you have available to you. It's called the Toyota Supplier Support Center. It describes some activities that Toyota undertook in the 1990s and are still undertaking. So what this video describes has been very highly developed, and it's a continuing outreach effort by Toyota. It has a number of characteristics. One, it's an extremely sophisticated high-level consulting practice in Toyota, where they actually go out to people that want to be Toyota suppliers, and they help them get their quality level up. It's very important part of it is that even though it's free, everyone has to participate. They will not send this team out if you just say, oh, it's for the workers to do. You have to have the entire stack of employees at that factory attend and participate in the training, from the factory director, who could be the president of that factory, depending how they're set up. But anyway, the factory manager, assistant factory managers, a lot of the personnel from the factory manager all the way down to the work floor have to participate. Now, the training is free. It's so valuable. It's some of the most valuable training and assistance that exists on the planet. But it is free as long as you participate properly. And that allows you to actually be a Toyota supplier. Their big problem is that North American quality standards are much lower than Japanese quality standards. And when I say much lower, I don't mean like 10% lower. I mean an order of magnitude lower. The quality of intermediate work that we produce in North America, even today, is less than 10% the quality level that is the norm in Japan. Now, that may or may not be good, because, I think, and a lot of people think, the Japanese have overshot the quality mark. Their quality is in excess of what's needed. Nonetheless, ours is probably below what's needed. So there's some problems in there. All the Japanese companies have huge difficulty getting North American suppliers because the North American companies just don't produce. They don't produce on time. They ship early, they ship late, both of which are equally bad and problematic and costly. They ship the wrong quantity, the wrong number. There are manufacturing defects. It's just, and the Japanese are just looking at it and just going, man, this is crazy. What do I do? Like, I can't buy from these guys. I can't put their things in my car because, my car is a quality car. I can't put this stuff in. So their difficulty is trying to figure out how to get our people to do this. It was much more difficult in 1990. That's when the video takes place. So there's a couple of aspects of the video. I mention it as I'm talking. One is it's a political video. All the Japanese companies were being totally hammered in the U.S. Congress and in the Canadian Parliament, because the Japanese were competing so successfully against North American companies that they were wiping out whole industries. Entire industries were being wiped out. So in about 1965, I think 100% of the color TV sets made in the world were made in the U.S. Right? By 1980, it was 0%, and they were made all in Japan. Okay, so entire industries wiped out. So the Japanese were being completely criticized, even worse than the Chinese are being criticized today. Both the Canadian and the U.S. governments were thinking of restricting the introduction or the importation of Japanese goods. They put taxes on it. You may not know this today. Like in Japan, there's a giant. Actually, it's in Canada too, I think. But I know. Whoops, I got that wrong. In the U.S., there's a giant tax on trucks that come in from overseas. It's like 25% duty on imported trucks. But if you bring the truck in pieces, like meaning if it doesn't have a bed on it, if you just take a few pieces off, you don't pay the tax. So what they do is they bring in the truck with the rails and with no bed on it, and they put the bed on here in North America, and they say, well, we're manufacturing trucks here. And that all started because of the Japanese penetration of the small truck market in the late 1960s, early 1970s. So huge problem. So Toyota is doing many things to solve this problem. One, they're trying to find North American suppliers. They're trying everything they get to try and get the quality up. Second thing they're doing is they're making videos and doing advertising and have lobbyists around in every state in the U.S. and in the national government to try and lobby all the lawmakers to say, oh, no, we're good guys. We're trying to be helpful here. Look, we make things here. We hire Americans. So this video actually is one of those efforts. And if you listen carefully, you can see how they're spinning the story to say, how, in this case, how great Toyota is doing. But at this same time, all the Japanese companies are having the same problem. So the other interesting part and great part about this video, and it's a really old one, it's from the mid to early 1990s. You'll see it's old, but that actually makes it wonderful. Because in those days, they made videos in a little bit more sloppy way, meaning they included more stuff. If we had a bunch of North American video editors and directors and people and business professors making this movie today, they would have cut out everything they didn't think was important. And they would have just told what they thought the important story is. They're much better at that. But it turns out they're wrong because they would have missed a lot of the important stuff and they would have cut it out. But because this was made a long time ago, it's still in there. They just filmed what they saw. And so that allows us as observers to observe some of the underlying features that in today's video market would have been cut out as non-essential. It turns out that when you're talking about world-class manufacturing, some of the things that the Anglo-Axis thinks were non-essential are actually the essential part of this other model, and would not be realized even by most people, by most people today. So that's a really valuable part of this video, and I will be commenting on it as we go. This would be the same experience you would have if you were on campus. So in face-to-face classes here on campus, I show the same video in class, and I stop this video like 20 times and I comment on it while people are watching it. So I have to apologize. I'm not the greatest video editor at this point, so it will be a little choppy and herky-jerky maybe, and I'm talking not about the base video, but about my stopping and editing and talking during it. I hope you can have a little patience and listen when I point out special things in this video. You will want to look at this again. You don't have to look at my annotated version again, but after you see this one, you should go back, after making some notes and maybe away today, go back and look at at least the original one and see if you can observe all the things that I'm pointing out to you as special artifacts of this approach that are revealed in this video. So, here we go. This is a very interesting video that has some historical importance. It is very informative and contributes to a lot of what we're doing in Chapter 3 and other things we've mentioned, but it is also a political video, and it's interesting to hear that. At this time, all the Japanese companies, not only automobile manufacturing, but other companies such as Panasonic and other electronics companies were being very severely criticized in the United States and in Canada, and there were some efforts to prohibit import of a certain number of vehicles or other products, or to levy special taxes on them because of the damage they were doing to the North American participants, such as the big three automobile makers. So watch and listen to those aspects. You will hear them pretty clearly as we go through this.
Supplier Development Outreach illustrates how Toyota changed over to a just-in-time inventory system.
Well, that's an example of a mistake that you'll see in a couple of different places in this video. The material was so new at that time that no one knew really what was going on. So Toyota did not change over to a just-in-time system. They were helping one of their suppliers change over to a just-in-time system. Toyota had invented this system more or less in the early 1950s. Before 1955 was when it got its start.
As more and more Toyota vehicles are manufactured in the USA and the sales of parts and accessories grow dramatically, it has become essential to find and develop totally reliable American sources for component parts and accessories which will meet the extremely high standards of quality expected by Toyota buyers. Flex and Gate's production system for Toyota truck bumpers evolved over several years. As volume grew, various problems arose.
Traditionally, the problems we had was trying to satisfy Toyota's needs on complying with their schedule, their needs, the different types of bumpers and different.
This was a gigantic problem for all the Japanese companies, Toyota in particular, because the level of quality of the suppliers in North America was so low that they could not really buy from them. So every Japanese company that did business here, assembled here, was surrounded by Japanese supplier companies. However, that was a political problem. One of the actions Toyota took was to try and train North American companies to achieve the same quality standards that were the norm in Japan at that time.
Before we implemented the system, we were nothing short of chaos. We were running around all over the place, giving instructions all over the place, having instructions miscommunicated, misunderstood, re-instructing, mistakes being caused by the mistakes in instruction.
That is actually one of the best compact statements of what happens in a lot of organizations. Not only are there errors generated, but in fixing the errors, they generate more errors. So that was a pretty nice little statement.
Toyota is different from the typical American companies where they would give their suppliers an annual economic increase. Toyota feels that for us to improve, we should be cutting our costs annually, so all the increases, which really are not controllable, like cost of energy or cost of materials, that can be made up. Henceforth, the price in the marketplace is not raised by Toyota, and we still maintain the volume in the marketplace.
A Kaizen organization and you're improving, that in fact your costs should be going down each year. That was exactly the opposite of what Western companies were doing at the time, and it was so much the opposite that no one could believe this. It was the practice at that time to negotiate the price increase. And there was inflation in the economy, so things like fuel and labor costs were increasing. Toyota felt that, and not just Toyota, all the Japanese companies felt that it was still a responsibility to get some price reduction that was more than the increase in the underlying costs. So if your labor went up and your other costs went up 5%, what they thought you should do is, you'd shoot for a 7% reduction. That way you'd still have a 2% net reduction after the 5% increase in costs. And then what they wanted was they wanted half of that improvement. So they wanted a 1% price decrease. This was a titanic shock to all of North America.
To overcome these problems, and for the mutual benefit of all parties.
This is an example of a photograph that you might not notice anything odd, but to me, I just cringe inside because it is just unbelievably awful in terms of the chaotic organization of the floor. Now, without the experience of seeing a lot of lean production in Toyota or world-class production places, you wouldn't notice this, but there will be several photographs throughout this video. If we stop the video, look at it, you'll see that there's just a chaos of things scattered about willy-nilly.
Supplier Development Outreach Program, designed to improve quality, productivity, and profitability in the operations of American companies who supply parts and accessories for Toyota vehicles. This program is a three-way partnership between Toyota Motor Corporation in Japan, Toyota Motor Sales here in America, and their U.S. suppliers.
This is a really interesting graphic because it has embedded in it a little Japanese history that you may not know about. Most people don't. At the end of World War II, the U.S. Army was in charge of Japan for almost 10 years, and they made a very strong effort to try and stop the power of the large Japanese companies that had supported the war effort. One of the ways they did that was breaking them up into pieces, and this includes breaking Toyota into two companies, Toyota Motor Corporation, TMC, and Toyota Motor Sales, TMS, and dividing up the ownership. This meant that Toyota had some significant problems. TMC was not allowed to sell cars except to TMS. So they would have to sell cars to TMS, and only TMS was allowed to sell cars to end users. So this ended about 10 years ago because the effects of the war, dampened, but it caused Toyota significant problems for 4 or 5 decades.
Initially, after meeting with top management and holding training seminars for senior executives, the general manager from TMC's Operations Management Consulting Department made a detailed inspection and review of Flex and Gates facilities, processes, and systems.
When you see the different people in this video, I want you to note that there are Toyota consultants from Kentucky. Those would be the guys in the white shirts with the red yokes over their shoulders. There are also very senior Japanese management consultants from Nagoya in Japan, Toyota headquarters. You're looking at them right now. There'd be these the Asian guys who would often in this video are wearing a baseball cap, or like the guy behind there, you can see him in the back, he's wearing a Cubs jacket. These are extremely senior people. They've, I'd say 20 to 30 years of experience, so some of the best operations people really on the planet.
This stage took a full week at the end of March 1990. To implement the highly efficient methods of the Toyota production system, the principal recommendations designed to achieve rapid results involved a total change in the way production was scheduled and how it flowed through the production process. In general, the system is designed to produce the highest quality products at the lowest cost and is based on the concept we call just-in-time.
To you, these two diagrams, especially that first one and the second one, where pretty chaotic production was changed into straightforward and smooth movement from position to position, they're familiar to you. You've actually done a little problem like this at the end of chapter 2, I think, or maybe chapter 3. But at the time this video was made, no one who saw this video had ever heard of any of these concepts at all. And that diagram that you just saw would be actually shocking, and most people would not believe it. In fact, the first time I saw this type of thing, I did not actually believe it.
This means that the system should produce only what is needed, when it is needed, and in the needed quantity. By making sure that all materials and products arrive at the correct place just in time, the manufacturer can achieve optimum efficiency and quality through levelized small lot production, which will reduce inventory costs, avoid waste, and ensure prompt delivery of the needed products. At Flex and Gates Bumper Works, to achieve a rapid improvement meant a change from their previous batch processing to producing a small quantity.
Here is another example of just a chaotic stack of junk. If you look at these, play the video again, or you can take a look at the other non-annotated video. You'll see that it's just full of chaos. There would be no way to look in there and really tell what was going on.
Of each product every day to match the incoming orders. But to do this required a major reduction in the die setup times.
That's true. In any major industry, one of the keys to running short lots, small lots, is being able to minimize the die setup time.
Notice, this is the first time they say it in the video, but this is really the core of this video, which is reducing the die setup times. And you have the concept, I believe it's mentioned in your book, I don't know if it's mentioned specifically, but SMED, single minute exchange of die. So the type of dies that we're looking at, these big machines, in about 1958, think of that, 1958, Toyota was able to get down to a single minute exchange of die, 1 minute. At the beginning of this video, notice it's, this was before the video was made, but they said that the start of the consulting project, it was taking these guys 44 minutes to change the dies. And in a minute they'll mention that they cut it in half to 20 minutes, and they were pretty proud of that. But remember, this is the early 90s, and Toyota had gotten down to 1 minute in about 1958.
We've been very successful in reducing our die time changeover from 44 minutes to under 20, cutting our overall time by 50%.
And that seems to be remarkable. However, in contrast, the Japanese consultants that you see there, remember I said they were very senior people, 30 or 40 years of experience? Trust me, they know how to get this thing down to 1 minute. And think about why they're not doing it. They're trying to train these people to do it on their own, and they're allowing them to do it slowly at their own pace and making some mistakes.
That's allowed us to be very effective in meeting the demands of just-in-time.
Over a period of 10 weeks, guided by the TMS project team.
Here is a classic example of Japanese work processes. Notice there's a flat table, a lot of paper, no computers, a lot of people writing and staring and staring and staring. The Japanese don't use statistics as much as we do, but they use numbers a lot more than we do, and they chew on things until they solve them.
Who had received specialist hands-on training in Japan. Bumper Works made major changes in the...
This is actually a key element to the entire system. If you notice, those two plates there are part of what's called a die. That would be something that is a mold. And they are painted blue. So what they've started to do is color code the dies so that only certain dies go into certain machines. Then they set up the die in the machine so they can just slide in and out without having to be micro-fitted every time there's a change. And they signal that by showing the color coding. So there will be a blue machine, and then the dies that go into that specific machine are painted blue. This is one of the most titanic innovations, and it goes the opposite of what I was trained to do in university. We were trained at that time to think that having any die be able to fit into any machine was better, and that was one of the things that led to 44-minute die changeover times. So this, you will see this throughout the video, is one of the most magical pieces. Toyota is the master of this. If you own a Toyota vehicle, go and open up the hood and start looking around, and you'll see little splashes of paint all over screws and bolts. They use a lot of color to show when a tool has touched a bolt. There will be a dash of color because their tools actually have little paint injectors on them. So they are very effective at using these approaches of physical marking.
Equipment and procedures. Dies were standardized with common plates, special clamping devices, locating wedges, and cushion pin holders. V-blocks are attached directly to the dies to help align them. Special storage stands for each die are placed close to the press.
Notice every die in that stack is blue. That was what I was talking about.
Yes. And innovative staging devices are employed to move the dies into position. With these and other techniques, by mid-July, the average setup time was cut in half to 22 minutes.
Yeah, since they've moved the dies down here to the next to the heim, it's so much easier. Saves a lot of time. And then all I have to do is just back it in, right into the rack. Then instead of traveling all the way down to the end of the building, you just slide it in here. It makes it so much quicker on our die changes.
Another vital principle of TPS is the Kanban, or pull system, which effectively pulls the required amounts of products through the manufacturing process, according to the demands of the orders received.
The Kanban system for us, and the way it's intended, is to be a tool to communicate the necessary information to the worker who needs the information. Not too much information, not too little information. All the vital information that's needed, so there is no waste of information. It has helped us by having the operator know exactly what he is to do, when he is to do it, and
This is actually the Kanban board. Those little purple squares are the Kanban cards. This is just on for a second. We'll see it a little bit later. But that's the entire control system right there.
Pull the production through. The production control card is used as a tool to let the operator know, one, what is the next job? Two, is the material available? Three, is the tool available to run that job? Knowing that the operator can efficiently set up, now that we have reduced die setup time to less than 15 minutes.
Notice the die setup time is still going down.
And produce exactly what we need, which is improved our throughput through our factory.
This is where our production begins, the sheer Kanban board. Every Kanban represents a piece of production. As we fill up the board, we know when we need to produce this particular product. In this situation, we're running to 910. We have 4 Kanban cards. When it passes over the green line, that means we need to produce this part. Before we started this Kanban system, we had no understanding of when we needed to produce. We had no schedule. We didn't understand how much inventory we had. This Kanban board represents our inventory, our work in process, everything in one. What the shear operator does, he walks up to the board, he sees the Kanbans are over the green line. He knows he needs to make this product. Each shift comes to this board, they look at the board, they see the Kanbans over the green line, then they know they need to make this particular product.
This is actually the entire control system for this part of the factory. They don't need an inventory accounting system or a process system, planning system, scheduling system. So one of Toyota's savings of money is actually they get rid of a huge amount of the control systems.
Continuous flow is the third major principle of the Toyota production system and its just-in-time philosophy.
In your book, this is called the U-shaped production line, which is an alternate name.
In order to achieve it, 2 consultants from Toyota Motor Corporation spent 2 two-week visits at Flex & Gates Bumper Works. And
2 things about Japanese people. They love baseball, which is one reason I like Japan, as I love baseball. But also, here's another example of them just working on things in paper over and over.
And together with TMS USA personnel, studied and analyzed the production flow and processes. They then radically redesigned the plant layout for maximum efficiency, cleanliness, and quality control.
This is the U-shaped line that we'll see operating a little bit later in the video. Notice there's a Kanban card, and they've also moved 2 of those giant presses to where they face each other.
With reduced die setup times, production now flows smoothly through the plant, from operation to operation, matching small lot sizes to daily shipping requirements.
Some of the improvements that we've made in the program have resulted in immediate benefits. An example would be the color coding of our dies to correspond with the presses that they go into. The presses have also been color coded, so now we know visually which die goes into which press.
We're probably the first U.S. supplier to Toyota who's had their key management people involved in attempting to bring up our productivity and to develop our people as a key supplier.
This is now the production line. We are seeing them make the initial cut in the metal and then the second cut to create the shape in the metal. Now we're seeing the quality control operation. And now we're back to that continuous flow line. Watch this very carefully. That's a lubrication film so that the steel does not tear while it's being formed. This material going in on one side and out the other side. This is the lubrication being wiped off.
The Kaizen process moved rapidly.
Rough edges being ground off.
Area to area, improving efficiency, and installing the continuous improvement philosophy
Once again, material going in one side and out the other.
in all areas. The warehouse operations were also reorganized with visual management techniques, which provide rapid visual control of component and finished product inventories. Special storage areas were developed to highlight daily shipment activities and work-in-process inventories.
I used to be a lift truck driver, and as far as our warehouse, we would just run parts after parts. It would be just a madhouse back there full of parts. Tubs were stacked 3 and 4 high. There was just no way you'd have to climb on them and to look for the parts. Nobody knew exactly what was there. With the new system, it's well organized. They're only 2 high. There's no climbing. It's all of a visual thing. As far as bumper shells and inventory, there is very little. You know, you can drive by and see them. You're not having to move 4 or 5 skids to get the skid in the back. My job has become a lot easier because it is starting to make a flow to where we're going to schedule stuff in. Sometimes we have some hectic times where we're having to get stuff in to try out, but normally it's becoming easier because I have a plan of attack ahead of time and I kind of know what parts will be used, what inventory will be used, what supplies will be used, depending on what we're going to run.
This way we have a continuous flow, and then when we get to the bumper weld shop,
All these further changes and new systems were implemented by the Bumper Works Continuous Improvement Team, working closely with Toyota's Supplier Development Outreach Team over a period of 8 months from May through December. The consultants and engineers from both Toyota Motor Corporation.
Wow, did you see that? You will never see that in Japan. They would never pat each other in the back. That's too informal, too physical. What you're seeing, though, is someone who's enjoying experiencing and learning about a foreign culture. So the Japanese people love to travel. They love to learn and participate in different cultures, and you've seen that in this video with that one particular action, which he was obviously enjoying interacting with these new comrades that he's met.
And Toyota Motor Sales made regular return visits to review progress and advise on the next steps to be taken through constant discussions and communications.
This is a key short segment. If you notice what we just ended and what we'll continue to see is, for a Japanese manager, the action is on the floor. And they're not going to be in their offices. They're not going to be looking at computers. They're going to be talking to real people who do real things. They try and get their information from the actual source. A word that they use now in Japan a lot is genshigemutsu. It means go to the place, so that legitimate decisions can only be, or felt to only be made when you are in the place that the action occurs.
Continuous improvement never stops. And after cutting die setup times in half, the team is now developing further improvements to cut the times by another 50% to 10 minutes or less.
Notice the new goal, 10 minutes or less. Now remember what I told you. Those Japanese guys that you saw, they could have taken this thing down to like 2 minutes in a week and a half. But they want the people at Flex and Gate to do their own decision making.
After achieving these reductions, the focus turned to increasing productivity in the welding area. But above all, the emphasis is always on maintaining the highest standards of quality that are symbolized in Toyota's name and reputation.
Implementing the continuous improvement system in our plant has had dramatic results. Some of the results have been a reduction in absenteeism in our plant. More of our workers, because they are now involved in sharing more and more ideas on how to improve, they feel a need in being wanted and a part of a team. So therefore they come to work.
Now, Flex and Gate, as with other suppliers.
Notice that guy right in the background, the gray sweater. That is a Flex and Gate employee. Notice the TSSC employee. in the white with the yellow shoulders, he's just watching. So notice that they are focusing on getting Flex-N-Gate to be able to do this on their own. This is a giant difference, and this is not Toyota being in the United States. They do this to each other in Japan. So it's a major characteristic of their operating doctrine that people should take their own responsibility and that people are capable of taking their own responsibility. They don't really distinguish between workers and managers in the sense of one being smarter or better than the other, which you know very well that we do quite a bit.
Will be able to carry on with the process of continuous improvement on their own. And it is all accomplished through dedication and teamwork.
I think one of the key ingredients of the continuous improvement program is the involvement of all the employees. There's an enthusiasm that goes with being a part of the change, participating on a day-by-day basis that can allow you to succeed where you normally couldn't. The entire operation depends upon everybody being committed. And the hourly employees, as well as the management employees, have joined together as a full team. Teamwork is still the answer.
All this has been achieved in some 8 months of intensive work as part of the Supplier Development Outreach Program. And it is not only Flex-N-Gate and Toyota who profit. The increased efficiency has also benefited other Flex-N-Gate customers. And its growing success and prosperity will be reflected in...
Now, I don't know about Flex-N-Gate, but actually the record in North America is terrible on this point. Most of the North American companies that worked with Toyota to improve operations only improved operations on the one line that supplied Toyota, and they actually never took that learning and applied it to the rest of their business. It was fairly common at that time for researchers to note that they did not spread this through. They thought of it as only something to help Toyota, not to expand to other operations.
Economic benefits to many of the people and small businesses in the surrounding community. This challenging and rewarding program involves a major commitment of funds and highly skilled personnel on the part of Toyota, and is being expanded to provide similar training and development to other suppliers. Implement the changes and improvements recommended by the Toyota consultants. This program represents a real international partnership. It is an act of faith in the future and a solid investment in the business and economy of this country. By the mid-90s, 50% of all Toyota vehicles and 50% of all parts and accessories sold in this country will be sourced here. The Supplier Development Outreach Program is a true symbol of Toyota's growing commitment to the people and industries of America.